was not exactly inaccurate there, and it may only be around for a few years, whereas Putin is thinking in terms of centuries, in terms of what he wants to accomplish in Ukraine.
Right, and perhaps why even a peace deal on the terms that Trump had offered him, which was pretty much anything anyone would have thought he wanted, wasn't good enough. General Hodges, I know that 2 weeks, 6 months, 50 days, who knows what it is, but right now it's 50 days. How much damage can Putin do in 50 days, given where the war is?
Well, we are seeing tonight, right now, what they can do. And, this attack tonight is another example of how little respect the Kremlin has for the United States and for the administration. And so when our president says, in 50 days, then Putin hears, okay, I've got 7 weeks where I can do whatever the hell I want, not worry about sanctions or anything happening, and knowing it'll probably get kicked down the road again as well. So 50 days, I mean, imagine Ukrainian civilians getting killed every night for the next now 7 weeks. And the problem, Aaron, is that these policies, these dates, these numbers, these weapons, none of them are connected to a strategy. The president is repeating the same mistake that the last president made, which is they are not clearly identifying the objective. What is it we're trying to accomplish in Ukraine? Negotiations are not an end state. A ceasefire is not an end state. What are we trying to accomplish? And of course, the end state should be that Russia lives inside its own borders.
All right. So, Alina, when Lavrov says, talking about how the time frame keeps changing, we've been through all this, and Medvedev says Russia doesn't care, but it sounds like they do care.
Well, they absolutely care. The United States, for the Kremlin, for Mr. Putin, has been, enemy number one since Putin basically came to power. So there's no question, to my mind, or I think to most people, that everything the United States does is watched very, very closely. And I think when Lavrov makes that comment, he's not just talking about Trump and, the inconsistencies that we've seen with this president on various issues. He's talking about the full scope of U.S. presidents, where we have, reset here, we have, more of a assertive response there, and it's just constant back and forth. And I think the truth is that we haven't had a policy or strategy on Russia for a very, very long time, since basically the end of the Cold War. And Putin's sitting back and he says, next time I'll have a different guy, and I'm still going to be here, exactly to Max's point.
Massive attack underway in Ukraine. So far, we understand at least 17 explosions in a matter of minutes. 17 explosions across the city, one of the largest cities in Ukraine tonight. According to officials there, most of the strikes are targeting a civilian area in Kharkiv. The attack coming as stunning new details are emerging about a phone call between President Trump and Zelensky. Now, it is the Financial Times that had obtained much of this information, and they are reporting that Trump asked Zelensky on this call, this is what the FT says, Volodymyr, can you hit Moscow? Can you hit St. Petersburg too? The FT says this is according to multiple people familiar with the call, sources who tell the FT that Zelensky then responded, absolutely, we can if you give us the weapons. Now, people briefed on the call, which took place one day after Trump spoke to Putin, said that Trump spoke about, quote, making the Russians feel the pain. So with all of this, Trump, of course, was asked about this today. Here's what he's saying publicly.
Should Zelensky target Moscow or deeper into Russia?
No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
All right. Well, that's what he's saying publicly. Privately, of course, could be a different matter. Sources tell CNN that despite Trump's public comments, he has not ruled out giving Zelensky new offensive weapons that Ukraine has long requested and previously been denied, like joint air-to-surface standoff missiles. Now, those missiles, perhaps not the range for Moscow or St. Petersburg, but they do go about 230 miles. And what that would do for Ukraine is put possibly 30 Russian additional air bases, 30 at risk. So Russia tonight is responding, and they're responding by going right there, all the way to the jugular, as they have done in other moments of great tension, and that is by threatening nuclear retaliation. Listen to this clip from state television in Russia that was uncovered by the journalist Julia Davis. She closely monitors Russian propaganda. Here's what she found.
Right now, they're considering giving them long-range weapons that can strike Moscow and St. Petersburg. What is Trump doing? He says, it isn't me. We understand that this is a lie. It's America. Therefore, we should clearly understand that we have to conduct a retaliatory strike against America and American forces. Yes, this is nuclear war.
Mincing no words there. This is nuclear war. Straight to that threat. And when it comes to Trump's threat to Putin, that Putin has 50 days to end the war or face massive sanctions, well, that is being met with a public shrug in Russia. Here's the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov.
50
days? It used to be 24 hours. It used to be 100 days. We've been through all of this.
And longtime Putin ally, top Russian security official now, Dmitry Medvedev, posted, Trump issued a theatrical ultimatum to the Kremlin. The world shuddered, expecting the consequences. Belligerent Europe was disappointed. Russia didn't care. Well, moments ago, Trump was asked about why he believes Putin will suddenly care and will suddenly change everything in 50 days.
A lot of opinions change very rapidly. Might not be 50 days, might be much sooner than 50 days.
But again, this is all public versus private. Russia can say that it doesn't care, and maybe there's truth in it. But part of the reason there could be some truth in that is because so far, Trump has not followed his words with actions. So far. I mean, in January, Trump posted online, if we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States. 44 days later, on March 7th, he posts, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. Well, time went by. Here's Trump on April 27th.
Do you trust President Putin? You know, in about 2 weeks.
Of course, nothing happened after any of those prognostications, and nothing happened after that 2-week time period. There was no sanctions, no tariffs, not then, not in January, not in March. But then again, here was Trump in May.
Do you still believe that Putin actually wants to end the war?
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not.
Well, of course, that was 6 weeks ago. And now Trump has put out a new deadline of 50 days. And tonight in Kharkiv, the world is getting a small taste of what Putin is capable of. Those explosions that I just talked about rocking the city, 17 of them, the massive ones, happened in apparently the period, just those, of 20 minutes. So gosh, you think about what happens in 20 minutes. Think about how many thousands of people will die in the next 50 days, if 50 days is a real deadline. Kristen Holmes is out front live outside the White House. So, Kristen, I lay out that history because it matters in terms of how serious this threat is. What are you learning about Trump's plan and about how he really sees Putin right now?
Yeah, Aaron, I think the thing to point to is, yes, this has been a long game of President Trump almost seemingly defending Putin at various times, asking these things strung along, and then also giving these kind of arbitrary deadlines of 2 weeks. But one thing that has changed over the last several months has been President Trump's perception of Vladimir Putin and perception of the relationship that he once believed that they had. And we've really been watching that unfold in real time as he has grown increasingly frustrated. One of the things he was asked today was that he was asked about what he says to Putin behind closed doors on the phone, and he said that Putin says he wants peace, but then never acts on it. This is a change that might actually lead to President Trump doing something, and that's what we're hearing from allies of his, particularly war hawks, people who really have been wanting him to enact these sanctions on Russia, is that his growing frustration might actually lend them to doing something. And one thing to make clear here, these tariffs that he's talking about in 50 days, they aren't tariffs, they aren't going to be on Russia themselves. We do so little trade with Russia, it wouldn't matter. It's on these intermediate intermediary countries that do big business with Russia and the United States. So the hope there is that even if this is just a threat, that these other countries are going to be wanting Putin to come to the table to negotiate. But whether or not that works remains to be seen, particularly when you're watching these officials in Russia kind of shrug off Trump's comments.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. Of course, all gets complicated, right? Biggest buyers of Russian energy. You're looking at China and India in the middle of trade negotiations with the U.S. Matthew Chance is on the ground in Moscow. And Matthew, you know, we just played the official government response to Trump's 50-day threat, right, from Lavrov. And you heard the state media, probably saw it yourself, going straight to nuclear threats. But you're there in Moscow, so you're talking to people who live there. What do they think? Do they have any concern here and think that Putin overplayed his hand or not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that many Russians are genuinely disappointed with the statement from President Trump, with his, kind of commitment to sanctions after 50 days and with his commitment to providing more weapons to Ukraine, because they've been told by state media for many months now that he's a friend of he's a friend of the Kremlin, a friend of Putin. He sees the world from Russia's point of view. He sees what Russia's interests are, and that he can be trusted. But now, so people in the street are talking about him as being sort of unreliable, emotional, things like that. Also, they've been told through state media that, Trump was sort of bent on delivering peace to the region. Of course, peace on Russia's terms. But that's not what they see when they hear of President Trump saying that Patriot missile systems, perhaps offensive weapons as well, are going to be sent to Ukraine. And he's being sort of treated and seen and portrayed a bit more as a sort of warmongering figure. And that's something that's reflected. It sort of comes from state media, but it's also reflected back on state media as well. One little caveat is that there's a lot of discussion in Russia, in the newspapers and on television controlled by the Kremlin, about how this is all really being controlled by NATO, by Europe and the Ukrainians. They're sort of forcing or influencing President Trump to do this. And so it kind of leaves the door slightly open for President Trump to be rehabilitated in the eyes of Russians in the future.
Out front now, retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who served as commanding general of U.S.